Hi, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Spirit Spotlight. I'm here with Marc Farrell of 10 to 1. I'm so excited to be chatting with him today. Welcome, Marc. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashley. Such a pleasure and great to connect.
Yes, I'm so glad to finally talk face to face. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and about 10 to 1?
Sure, happy to. I'll probably tell you more about 10 to 1 than myself, but maybe the most important part of my personal story is where I'm from. So born and raised in Trinidad and Tobago, spent the first 16 years of my life living in Trinity before moving to the US for college. So did undergrad, grad school here. Most of my professional life has been here in the US, with a couple of years in the UK also. So a little bit of a hybrid experience. But really sort of that background has provided the inspiration for creating 10 to 1. As somebody who's from the Caribbean, born and raised there for a long time, I have looked on somewhat curiously, I guess, at rum and rum culture, certainly Caribbean culture as it's brought to life here in the US. And thought to myself that we had a real opportunity to bridge that gap. If I think about rum specifically, for me, rum is represented in the hearts and minds of many consumers here as typically sort of a lower end spirit, sort of your sugary, slushy spring break cocktails, siloed into a very specific set of occasions. And, as somebody who clearly has a great degree of reverence and affinity to the spirit, I thought that we, again, had an amazing opportunity to tell a different story and show a different side of not just rum and rum culture, but again, Caribbean culture more broadly. Really finding a way to bring those things to life in a much more authentic, much more inspired, and I think much more contemporary fashion as well. And so I think that idea, that seed that was planted, gave rise to 10 to 1.
So you came here from Trinidad and Tobago, then you went to MIT and Cambridge, and then you worked for Starbucks. So how has all of that experience played into what you're doing now with 10 to 1?
Yeah, lucky to have had a number of pretty amazing stops along the way. MIT, Cambridge, and Harvard Business School here in the US is where I kind of had my formative educational adventures, if you will.
And then, yeah, amazing institutions.
Yeah, really great institutions and really lucky to just have been a part of them. I mean, honestly, that's all credit to my parents for what they were able to do and kind of get me on that path. And then professionally, early career in consumer, actually in consulting at Bain & Company and then in private equity with Fidelity. Then I had another startup in the sports and media space before moving to Starbucks, where I was on their exec team, ran the e-commerce business and ran part of the retail business for them as well. And I think it's a very sort of, I guess, maybe strange amalgamation of experiences that leads somebody becoming the founder of a rum company. But the things that I will say that really kind of have a through line there are, all of those experiences were focused on consumer. So I've always been a big fan of building consumer brands, telling stories that resonate with a very specific audience. And I think my experience at Starbucks in particular was really, really helpful in that vein, right? I think kind of curated a different level of brand discipline in my own mind. And I've tried to bring some of that to bear when we thought about some of the early storytelling around 10 to 1 as well. So I'd say a lot of great proving grounds and training grounds kind of build up that consumer product skill set over time, and then building in sort of the brand discipline, the sense of purpose, and even looking at a guy like Howard Schultz you work with at Starbucks, where I always tell people, seeing what it looks like for somebody to build a brand through the lens of who they are and what they care about really does leave an impression on you as an entrepreneur, and was something that I felt very, very convicted to do whenever I had the chance to start 10 to 1.
Was there like a specific moment that you were like, I am ready to leave and start my own business? Or was it just like a combination of a lot of things?
It's the old sort of, the visual metaphor of the straw breaking the camel's back, I think is kind of how these things tend to go. So it's, you see, like I remember myself and Zach Watson, who's my co-founder and 10 to 1, he and I spent a lot of summers prior to finally pulling the trigger here, drinking rum while all of our boys are out drinking tequila, and like kind of having conversations back and forth on what it would actually look like to to create a rum brand. And you say these things half jokingly initially, right? And then, they get progressively more and more serious. And then there's one day that comes along. I think for us, that was sort of in the summer of, what was that? The summer of 2017, kind of early 2018, where just like, you know what, we have to do this, right? I think many entrepreneurs, probably all entrepreneurs, can kind of relate to that moment in time where the thoughts in your head really become impossible to ignore. People ask, how hard is it to become an entrepreneur? I tell them, like, when the thing becomes so all-consuming that you really have no choice but to kind of go do it, it really doesn't make it that difficult to kind of go take the plunge. And so that's sort of how 10 to 1 manifested in those early days.
So, you decided to start your own rum. What steps did you take to get started?
Yeah, you say, all right, cool, I'm gonna start a rum brand. And then you're like, all right, well, how do I start a rum brand, right? The first thing was having a very, very clear point of view on what the product value proposition was going to be. And for me, that was a function of, everything from the blend story that ultimately kind of became 10 to 1 to certainly having a very unique point of view or unique brief for the taste profile that we wanted to offer and what have you. I always tell people, I think we do a lot of really great stuff on the creative side and the brand storytelling side and the event side. But my entire team knows that we are a product first organization, right? Like, it starts with the product, starts with the excellence in the bottle, and then you can give yourself the license and the equity, right, to really sort of build around that. And so for us, we started first with, very intense iterative process on the product development side. I thought this idea of bringing a Caribbean blend to life would actually be very compelling. You could then sort of harness different distillation methods, different terroir, different provenance. These things are all true in rum, bring them to life in a single blend. I knew I wanted to create something that was really versatile, something that you could sip on its own, like our dark rum, neat on the rocks, splash of soda water or coconut water, but could also up-level your cocktail experience. You go to all these Michelin star spots all around New York, and 10 to 1 is often the rum of record, whether they're creating their riffs on an old-fashioned or a Manhattan or a Negroni. And so that was, the versatility was important. The no added anything was really important in that brief. Again, there's this perception of rum being super sweet and highly caloric. We have no added sugar, no added color, no added flavoring. The rum is the rum. What you get in the bottle is kind of, right, sort of what came off the still or what was aged in a barrel. So product was very much step one. And then you get into the packaging, the branding, the creative suite, the storytelling, where really kind of anchoring it in a lot of authentic Caribbean history, culture, and heritage was very much the most important part for us in that second act.
I'm listening to you talk and I'm totally getting what you're saying as far as your product, because firstly, you taste 10 to 1 and it's a serious rum. Like, it's not one of those like sugary rums that people typically think of. I mean, it's like you can drink it alone or in a cocktail, as you mentioned. So I totally get what you're saying. And I think you guys have done an amazing job of the storytelling, as you mentioned, and just positioning it as a Caribbean rum, but like sophisticated. I actually have a bottle here, and I just love everything that it's just such a classy representation of rum.
It's funny, I always have a bottle off camera as well. I'll show mine too. But I tell people actually that the design is a great window into how we thought about bringing this brand to life, right? If you look at a lot of rum bottles, I'm not trying to be overly critical, but they tend to kind of live in this world of pirates and plantations, as I like to call it, right? Somewhat kitschy, a little bit tropish, definitely caricatured. And I think, if you are from the Caribbean, or you even know someone from the Caribbean, you've been to the Caribbean, you understand what a sort of rich tapestry, what an amazing cultural fabric we all come from, right? And where are the opportunities or the moments to start celebrating some of that? And so for us, creating a bottle design that reflected authentic Caribbean history, culture, and heritage while being very modern, contemporary. This is a bottle hopefully anybody who's watching would be proud to have on their back bar. Meant a lot to us, right? I mean, you kind of start with the name, right? The name 10 to 1 is inspired by the original Caribbean Federation, which consisted of 10 countries. So the idea of 10 becoming 1, and Trinidad's prime minister at the time said 1 from 10 equals 0. He was making the point that if you remove 1 from the collective, the whole thing falls apart. And so we say 10 to 1 is a brand that is grounded in this idea of community, strength in numbers, the idea that we're stronger together than we are apart. And by the way, that's an idea and an ideal that certainly is very resonant for somebody from the Caribbean, but it's one that can apply to any and all of us, regardless of where you are in the world, right? And so whether you're starting with the name, the logo, which is actually the scarlet ibis, the national bird of Trinidad, the side labels, which kind of reference old shipping labels from the days of rum or sugarcane, I should actually say, making its way, from the Caribbean through the ports of the Americas and certainly into Europe as well. I think there's lots of ways to kind of tell that story in a very, a very authentic and very meaningful way, while making it super contemporary and modern at the same time.
Oh, you're giving me chills. I'm like, I love, it's so well thought out, like amazing. How has this experience been for you being a Black man in the spirits industry? Have you noticed any trends or, more people getting into the space? Like, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on it. I mean, I think that, again, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, but I've been there since I was 16 years old. So almost my entire experience as an adult has been in the US, right? So I understand sort of the experience of just being a Black man in America, regardless of where you're from. And I say that, there are lots of elements of the experience, whether you're, selling spirits or selling socks, right? Or, working at the mall that are fairly common, right? I think, we all have a desire to shine a light on who we are and where we're from, wherever that is, in a very authentic fashion. I think, you want to make sure that people approach you and acknowledge you with a certain level of seriousness. There are lots of those elements that I think will create unique challenges as a Black man or woman, Black person, right? That's trying to make their way into this category. But they would actually sound quite similar to folks who are doing entrepreneurial endeavors in other verticals as well, in terms of the emerging trends. I do think that if you look at the last year or so, I think it's certainly in the wake of, I would call like that the moments around George Floyd, kind of like the civil rights reckoning, right? Is really what it's been for a lot of folks in this country, and really kind of understanding, are there ways to better empower, to better unlock the creativity of, or the entrepreneurial spirit of folks of color, right? Again, man, woman, or Caribbean, African American, the list goes on. I do kind of feel like there's a little bit of a groundswell that's starting to happen where you're seeing some more of these brands emerge. Now, the hope is that we are all going to be able to kind of get the support that's required. I think both from consumers who have an interest in that and from the industry ecosystem that surrounds it, right, to give you a chance to be successful. And that's a piece that I think is a story that is yet, the story has not completely been written at this stage. So I think we'll see how it kind of shakes out in the years to come.
Yeah. I have a two-parter.
Sure. What
legacy do you want to leave with 10 to Rum and 10 to 1 Rum? And what's next for you?
I care about a few things. First and foremost, I care about making my family proud. I mean, my parents and my twin sister, most importantly. But I have an amazing, my cousins, aunts, and uncles are just like my family extended. So I care always about making them proud, kind of repaying the investment that they've made in me. I care about making with this business. I want this to be something that Caribbean people, whether you're born and raised there, you feel like you're part of the extended diaspora, the family, that they can feel proud of. That, wow, somebody actually put our story on a platform. And look, we all have different experiences. I'm not trying to be the author of all things Caribbean, but that guy made an earnest effort to try to tell a part of the Caribbean story or share a part of the Caribbean experience in a very, again, authentic and meaningful type of way. I think that's important. And then 3, we talk a lot about this idea of Rum Reimagined. We talk a lot about this idea of challenging expectations. To me, legacy in this case is, how do you create something that's truly iconic? We can all point at different products in different categories. Maybe it was Patron and tequila way back in the day, where we used to think about it like X. Now we think about it like Y. And somebody created that fulcrum, that pivot point. I think we have a massive opportunity and ability to do that in rum. I would love for this to be a product that people look at 5 years from now and they're like, you walk into a bar, you're like, yo, yeah, 10 to 1. Remember when we used to think about rum as that.
Mhm.
And now we think about it as this. And in your mind, like 10-1 was the catalyst that allowed that to happen. That to me is probably the greatest gift, I suppose, that we could get as a brand.
That's amazing. How do we get it onto more shelves?
I tell all my friends, tell all the 10-1 super fans, call and ask for it. We're in about 10 states now, by the way, if anyone watching. So New York, DC, Maryland, Delaware, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida, Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin. So you can go to 10to1rum.com, type in your zip code. We have a great way to find store located. It'll show you the nearest restaurant or liquor store near to you that's carrying 10-1. Hopefully there's something nearby for folks to enjoy. If it's not available, I'd say do two things. Number one, you can get it on our e-commerce site. So you go to shop10to1.com and you can pick up a bottle there. We deliver to most states in the US. But I also agree with you. We got to get it on more shelves. So call your nearest liquor store, ask them for it again, hit them up on IG, tag us in a post, demand that they place it. And I think, no, those things, that kind of groundswell of support really does make a massive difference. And so I think that like the more you see people out there, you make a drink at home, tag us in a post on IG, tag your neighborhood liquor store, let them know they need to pick it up as well. All of those things I think do make a massive difference.
When you're not in the US or in Trinidad and Tobago, where's your favorite place to travel?
That's a great question. I've gone to I think it was like 51 countries at last count. So I've bounced around a little bit. Yeah, I bounced around a little bit in my time. My favorite is probably South Africa. I've been there. Yeah, I mean South Africa is super dope. This is not a paid endorsement. They have to contact me, but like it's super dope. I love it. I've been to Cape Town 3 different times, about 8 years apart. And it's like a magical place, right?
Cape Town's my favorite.
Yeah, it's just crazy. The culture and the historical legacy, I mean, certainly a little bit complicated with apartheid and stuff, but to kind of see how people have tried to emerge from that is I think, inspiring in a lot of ways, and just the natural beauty and terrain of the place is just incredible. So South Africa is probably my favorite, but there are a lot of close seconds that would come right behind that.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. But South Africa, as you said, is magical. So Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me and for having us and giving us a chance to kind of share the story of 10-1. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.